We've talked about the brutal and bullying behavior of immigration officers and their treatment of migrants and students and other folks coming to our country over the past few months. But we've also seen multiple examples of American citizens on the receiving end of these tactics as well.
A Vermont school superintendent detained by ICE after visiting his family in Nicaragua.
Wilmer Chavarria says he was detained for several hours while returning to the United States through the Houston, Texas port of entry on Monday night.
Chavarria tells Channel 3 that the officers who stopped him tried to access his computer with sensitive student data on it, but said he would not give up his passwords.
Despite being a U.S. citizen, he was told he had no constitutional rights and his job was threatened.
Joining me now is Wilmer Chavarria. He's the American citizen and Vermont school superintendent who is detained by Customs and Border Protection. Wilmer, thank you so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to just start. You and your husband, I believe, had come back from Nicaragua, and I think you're flying through Houston. And I want to set the scene here. You're an American citizen. You're naturalized. You actually do a fair amount of international travel to the point where you have what's called Nexus, which is like global entry. Like, you know, you've been vetted and cleared. This is fairly routine for you. What happened in that Houston airport?
I was going about my business. I usually just take a few seconds to cross that area of the airport because I do that trip very often. And I've had global entry at least since 2018. Since I've been naturalized citizen, and I've also been traveling into the United States for about 20 years maybe. And so I was just going about my day and going through the airport, and then all of a sudden they're calling officers to escort me away and separate me from my spouse. So immediately the whole situation becomes very scary. My marriage gets questioned right off the bat by an officer, and we are separated, and I was brought into two different detention rooms, one of which was isolated. Nobody else was there. My devices were taken away, and I was interrogated at least by 5 different officers, 3 of which were in civilian clothes with no identification, or at least if they had something, I couldn't see it.
What were they after? Like what was the subject of the interrogation?
It's still not clear to me because the questions were all over the place, and I was there at least for 4 hours, if not 5. And the first thing that they asked me once they took me into a room by myself and with no one else, after they had separated me from my spouse, was to surrender all of my devices and to give them all of my passwords, and pins. And I denied that at first because I said I have a district-issued laptop for my work, and that contains sensitive student and family information, and that is protected by federal privacy laws that I cannot just release this information to third parties. We also have district policy that prohibits me from giving that information without a judicial warrant. So what I think was harassment began right from the get-go, and that lasted for a few hours at least.
What was the nature of was it, were they intimidating? Was it a good cop, bad cop? Like, did you get a sense that there was something that you could tell them that would make them stop? Did you tell them you were an American citizen?
I told them I was an American citizen. I questioned why they were using those tactics on me. I asked about my constitutional rights. An officer outright said out loud that I have no constitutional rights at a point of entry, which I just went quiet because that was unbelievable to me. It was pretty intimidating. At some point, I had 4 officers standing in front of me while they made me sit down, and they were basically harassing me verbally constantly. And I had to watch what I said and how I said it, because saying something wrong would irritate someone and get them to abuse me verbally. And I would say there was a good cop, bad cop going on, but mostly bad cop. And I was not sure who I was dealing with, and it was pretty intimidating. And throughout this time, I have no idea where my spouse is, and the terror that my spouse might be going through, and knowing that my spouse doesn't know where I am. So I still don't know what the whole interrogation was about. They questioned me everything from my work to my marriage. They even asked me whether I was legally married, even though we made it clear from the get-go that we were married, and I've been together with my spouse for 15 years.
This is what the Customs and Border Patrol says about electronic device searches, that they follow strict policies and directives, that the searches are rare and highly regulated. They have been used in identifying and combating serious crimes. And they say, pursuant to the Border Search Authority, they do say all travelers are obligated to present their electronic devices and the information resident in the device in a condition that allows for the examination of the device and its contents. This is a theme that we've seen in several people we've interviewed, where the first thing they want is they want to go through everyone's phones, and they say they have the right to do it.
And I made it clear to the officers that I was allowing them, I was consenting for them to look through my personal information, but I was not consenting for them to go through my district information with student information in it, because that would be violating federal law. And they still insisted. They became very angry, and they continued to hold me until I provided them my devices.
So how did this end? Was there, they got bored? They decided that their theory of some sham marriage wasn't true? Like, how did it resolve?
I have no idea exactly what they found or what they didn't find or how they decided to let me go. But the ending was very bizarre. It ended with additional interrogation, people telling me that they indeed had gained access to my devices, telling me that they had not looked through district files, even though I have no way to know that because it was done away from me. They took them away from me. And then the officers began telling me their personal stories. And since you're scared and you have no idea who you're dealing with, I had to pretend like that was normal and just smile back and just nod while they're telling me about their stories of detaining other detainees. And at the end, a second officer comes to me and shakes my hand and says that he admires my resilience. And this whole thing that's surreal, I'm just praying for it to end. And I just smile back and I shake their hand back. And I hope that they take me back to my spouse.
Unreal. You were eventually reunited with your spouse. Thank goodness. Wilma Chavarria, thank you for sharing your story tonight. That is really unbelievable.